I'm here today with Sven Scharpen. I hope I said it right. I have a
You
history of
did good.
mispronouncing things. And Sven reached out to me. You're in Colorado, and we both testified on a bill in Colorado that is, I think, for both of us, pretty horrifying. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about you and what it is about this bill that motivated you to sign up to testify?
Yeah, yeah, my name's Sven Scharpen. I'm a Colorado native, lifelong Colorado resident, pretty much, vast majority of my life. And I've had a long history of having a lot of problems just with school and having abusive policies and mandatory special education because, I was diagnosed with autism at less than 2 years old. So, and that basically stole my entire childhood. I mean, luckily my mom was able to was able to you know fight for me very well, and it was great. If it weren't for her, I'd probably be a detransitioner at best right now. So yeah, but I had a lot of issues in the school system. Like they kept trying to treat me like a baby. They were giving me preschool and kindergarten level assignments in fifth and sixth grade, respectively. They put you in special education programs. They they forced you to go to different schools. In my case, when I was 14, I was forced to go to a different school in a different liberal city just for being autistic. It wasn't because my grades were bad. It wasn't because I might have said something that was controversial. Just because I'm autistic and they did not have any regard for my relationships. So your social and developmental life, they always try to steal it from you. Like again, I was able to get out of much of that, but that doesn't mean I wasn't affected. I've had physical and verbal abuse in school before, and it's not good. And now, after all of that, over half the kids being referred to gender clinics are autistic. You knew
Yeah,
about
and I
that.
think that that's something that is just shocking to me, and it also just it it's one of the things that just it infuriates me really. All of the resources that are going to LGBT clubs, that are going to
Mhm.
pride organizations, that are going to the medical transition research, all this stuff to prop up gender ideology, while there are kids who are just floundering in our education system because we're not putting the resource in to help. I mean, a kid with autism versus a child who's blind versus a child who's deaf versus a child who has intellectual disabilities, those are all very different types of students.
Yeah,
And yet they all get put into special ed with very limited resources.
it's absolutely tragic, and it's heartbreaking to me. Like these are my peers. These are the people I can relate to the most. And I'd say about half of detransitioners, including the aforementioned Chloe Cole, as well as Laura Becker, Simon, and the list goes on. Richie Herron's autistic. You know, it's a long list of detransitioners.
Yeah, I'm on a spectrum. I think uh,
Oh,
was I'm a
welcome to the
desister.
club.
Yeah, I'm a desister.
You
So I think,
you
and I think
desisted.
desisted because I'm older than you. I was in school at a time where they didn't have this ideology. So when
Hmm.
I started to question whether or not I was a girl, there was nobody saying, "Oh, yes, you actually are a boy. Here's the door to
Oh.
the transition room." Instead, I was referred to the school psychologist who basically identified that I had a bunch of issues that I needed help with. So I got the kind of help kids these days
Yeah.
should be getting.
Yeah. I mean, I narrowly missed a social transition. I learned about it and it did push me to like questioning my identity, but it didn't go beyond anything other than like, I mean, the closest I got was when my parents asked me whether I preferred boys' clothes or girls' clothes. I'm not gonna just yet say how they asked that or why they asked that. I'm just gonna say I was asked that. And I, with a little bit of reluctance, I said boys' clothes.
But
So
even
if
but
if
the
I
fact
if that
that you get
decision,
there, it's even framed like that, that there are boys' clothes and girls' clothes,
yeah,
I think is really confusing to a child to any child, but especially a child with autism who's very black and white in their thinking.
Mm,
I had all three of my children wore non-stereotypical clothes for their
mm,
sex. And
yeah.
it wasn't, I, at no point did I say something like, you're wearing boys' clothes to my daughter or you're wearing girls' clothes to my son. They were just the clothes that they were most comfortable in.
Yeah. But well, I usually wore boys' clothes. It's just I was asked that question at some point. Again, I'll maybe later I'll get to how that ended up happening,
Mhm.
but I don't think my siblings are mature enough to know the truth just yet.
Yeah. Well, and there's some
They
things that
probably won't
really,
find they probably won't find this video for years, but if they're
yeah, it's
watching, hello.
yeah, and you do have to, I mean, stuff that you put out there is out there forever. And so
Mhm,
it is important. I mean, I talk about my children generically because I do feel like, their history is part of my history, but I try really to be careful not to specifically talk about them individually because their history is
mhm,
their history. But I would be curious,
mhm.
as someone who has watched peer after peer after peer kind of fall to the trans ideology, can you explain a little bit why you think kids who are autistic are so prone to be victim to it?
Well, yeah, this is like a thing that nobody's really talking about. I'm like the only person who really knows why. I've learned through experience and through other people's stories. And again, I listen to detransitioners' stories. My upbringing isn't that different from say Chloe Cole. It's just my childhood's not that different from hers. It was just without the transition because I was able to narrowly avoid it. But yeah, like the reason for this is society doesn't love us. Society treats us based on misconceptions that were invented like 50 years ago. So, and I'm seeing people like Robert Kennedy. I mean, I do think there is a massive chronic health epidemic going on, and what people call severe autism, if that's rising, then you got to go find what's causing that. But there's a lot of positive aspects to autism that nobody really talks about. Like, for example, you're always really good at something. Maybe not always, but much of the time you're into something and you know more about it than someone with a college degree, even when you're a teenager. So it's quite amusing, and we're often really good at things like organization, micromanagement, attention to detail. There's a lot of stuff, and studies will tell you that we often have higher IQs on average than non-autistic folks. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but there's a lot of positive aspects to us that nobody knows about. So, and there's a lot of misconceptions. For example, the aforementioned stereotypes of the 70s that people think we're mentally retarded, all of us. But
Mhm.
also, people think we have no empathy. People think we're asexual. People think that we don't want to have relationships. Like the the list goes on. People think we're too dangerous to drive. I mean, it's crazy. So people
Well, I
think,
wonder,
and they
yeah,
treat us. Every
yeah, if
institution treats us based on those misconceptions, and
And if you're
everyone in
feeling like
society.
you don't fit in, then it would
Yeah,
make sense that suddenly like there's this group of people that suddenly will accept you no matter what.
yeah.
You can be as I mean, I think that's one of the things that I struggled with growing up that I think is
Mm,
less of an issue now is that I was the weird kid and there really
mm.
just wasn't a lot of tolerance for weird. I think that there
Well,
is
I
now.
was definitely. I mean, in school, I had periods of being the coolest kid in school to being the most isolated kid in school, and sometimes these years would be back to back with each other, like
Interesting.
as if they're in completely different periods of my life. Like eighth grade versus ninth grade. Like in eighth grade, I was the coolest kid in school, and then the very following year, that's when I was forced to go to the wrong school. I had almost no close relationships. I mean, I had a few people I would talk to, but it just wasn't the same. I missed my old friends a lot, and that's really one of the only times in my life that people even tried to bully me. Praise God, I didn't really have to deal with that very much. I know there's a
Yeah.
lot of autistic kids that get bullied all the time. It's just another thing on top of the administrative abuse that you're going through.
So what would you recommend? for a kid who's struggling and feeling like, I mean, I know a lot of, on top of autism, a lot of the kids who are drawn to transgender identity are kids who are same-sex attracted. So you
Oh yeah.
have like, it seems like almost like a catch-all for all the kids who don't fit into the norm. They sort of are drawn to the trans ideology, and I'm looking at you and you have long hair, and that right there is enough for some people to say, well, see, he's gender nonconforming. He must be
Yep,
transgender.
I've gotten some of that actually. And the reason it's long is the whole point of that was actually to make myself look more feminine during a time where I felt like everything was lost, and I just never got rid of it. And I'm
Oh,
letting it
interesting.
serve as a sort of testament to what I missed. I missed, and it's just hair. I could get
Right.
rid of this whenever I want. I plan on
Yeah.
donating it if I just decide I don't want long hair anymore.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I don't get haircuts because cut my own hair and I'd have probably a really short hair, but I hate getting my hair cut. It's not like people messing with my head.
Oh,
Um,
a lot of autistic folks have that. So, and people tell you, oh, autistic girls don't like the feeling of hair on their skin. It's probably more common that you're going to find autistic people of either sex not wanting haircuts because you're sensitive to that kind of touch from a stranger.
Right. And so
And,
so your
you
long
know,
hair is enough right there, especially in the current environment for someone
oh,
to
yeah.
look and be like, oh, huh. Yeah. Sven must be questioning his gender.
Yeah, I've had comments like, "Oh, your manly hormones are coming up. You might want to take your estradiol."
Wow. That is,
I just thought that was so funny.
yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
And the way it's almost become a game, because I hear people talk about titty skittles and I mean all kinds of, they have all these goofy words for the estrogen that they're
crazy.
encouraging. Yeah. So what motivated you to sign up to testify in Colorado? Because very few people do that, and I find
Well,
that yeah, it takes a certain kind of passion in order to get to the point where you actually go and
well,
testify.
I've been testifying for a bunch of stuff. That bill was actually like the fourth thing I've testified on
Good
because,
for
well, it was actually about a year ago. I met up with CPAN for their Rocky Mountain Summit last year, and I met Chloe Cole and Aaron Lee and Lori
Uh-huh.
Gimmelstein there. The former two I've grown pretty close to. I don't see Chloe very often, but it's like once a year, but it's still more often than my old high school classmates at this point.
Oh wow, and
Uh,
that just happened, the most recent one, didn't it? Was it just this weekend?
yeah, the new one. Chloe wasn't there, but there was Chloe Lee, Aaron Lee's daughter.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, it was great, and I started speaking out because I learned. Like I was just watching autistic content creators on the internet at the turn of 2023 to 2024. So like end of 2023, beginning of 2024. And I noticed that none of them were heterosexual. They all said they were something other than straight. I was like, huh? Something's not right here.
Yeah.
So I looked up, is there something, are autistic people more likely to be non-straight? And of course of course, they're more likely to be LGBTQ TTT plus two less than, greater than, backwards R, backwards N, Chinese character, Chinese character, Chinese character, Chinese character, this, whatever.
Well, in my
Yeah,
experience with people
and
who are
nobody's telling
autistic
me
is, yeah, that they
that
tend to be not necessarily, I mean, it's the sensory issues again. So
okay,
their sexuality is a little bit more complicated, I think, because
it
it's
can be, but I
can be,
know
but you
it
wouldn't have a higher number of
like
homosexual.
a higher percentage of
Yeah.
non-straight. You shouldn't, and that's not
But
supposed
when
to
you
be the
look at the
case.
T, it's crazy high.
Yeah, the
The
T
number.
alone is like 40% of every autistic person, I'd say. And like nobody's telling me why, so I have to look at why. And I have found out again, it goes on down to all the abuses we go through. And again, like it's not just the institutions. Like when you're growing up as a kid, no one ever talks to you, nobody ever invites you to anything, and the school treats you almost like you're an animal.
So just a
And like
lack of assimilating, really.
there's no you're pretty much rejected from society, and very often you're placed like in early intervention where you're not even allowed to be your actual self. Like the way God made you to the system is wrong.
Well, and then I don't know if you experience this, but the other thing that I think happens often is there's an attempt to medicate because
Oh,
this idea that somehow they can medicate into normalcy. And the more I research psychotropic medications, the more horrified I am that they are probably very much like the whole trans movement. They're just built on a bunch of lies that these medications are
mhm.
incredibly harmful.
I
And
was,
so,
let me tell you something. I was placed on Zoloft, Risperidol, and Clonidine, and perhaps several others, starting at the age of 5, and I'm only just now getting off of it all. Like I just
yeah,
got off the Risperidol, which was actually screened for prolactin when I was 12, because there was a real fear that I would grow breast, even though I didn't learn about trans for another 2 years after that. Like I can't imagine wearing a binder right now just because of I was put on a medication without ever learning what trans was.
well, and those medications are heavy. I mean, they're not approved for children
I mean,
in any way, shape,
my
or
my doses aren't exactly heavy, maybe 1/10 of a milligram, but the Zoloft is 250 times more. It's 25 full milligrams of material. And who knows what that's done to me? I mean, I'm not even a detransitioner. I've been horribly medicalized.
right.
And I've probably
Yeah.
got lifelong twitchy movements for life. And I've seen other people with I've seen Chloe Cole make the same sort of gestures as I do.
Yeah. Oh, that just makes me so sad. The medicalization at
So,
such an early
like,
age.
you don't even have to be trans for big pharma to exploit you. It's all
Well, and
exploitation. They're taking advantage of us, making up
yeah,
these lies. I mean, yeah,
yeah,
I had issues when I was a little kid, but instead of medicating, you could just go and say, okay, let me find the cause of why my 5-year-old autistic kid is having these outbursts.
right,
Because there were times I did have some pretty crazy outbursts as a little kid. That happens, but it happens to a lot of non-autistic kids too. So little boys break stuff. Little boys shove their little sisters into the wall. It's not an autism exclusive thing.
right.
So I was medicated for it, but another kid that did those same things probably wasn't. They were probably just given a slap on the wrist, maybe timeout or some other crazy punishment for hurting their sibling.
Well, and that's
But
again where the
it's not like they're
resources are
medical. It's
lacking.
not like they're
Yeah.
medicalized for it for a decade and a half.
Yeah, that's just crazy. And that's where, again, I have a history of ADHD, and at one point I
Mm,
kind of did deep dive into the meds, and I met with sort of the local expert, and he said ADHD is just a lack of good fit between the person and their environment. And so throughout my childhood, they wanted to medicate me because I didn't fit in well with the environment, and rather than changing the environment they medicate the kids. And that's
well,
that's again, if we had the resources, if we put all the money that's going into the
into
trans
gender
ideology,
ideology.
yeah, gender ideology, if we put all that money, take, all the money for every single flag, every single parade, every single, club, all that, and put it into the school system to improve them, our kids would
We'd
be
be in
in
a
such,
much we'd be
yeah,
in a really different world right now. There would be
yeah.
no the 2020s would not look like the 70s. They would probably look more like the 90s.
Right. Yeah, things would be, but the
We'd
I
be
think that you touched
it
on
wouldn't
big
be nearly as
pharma,
bad.
and that to me is the biggest thing it's incredibly confusing to me because if you read the history of big pharma over and over and over and over again, they have shown that they
Mhm.
lie, that they intentionally create medications that are harmful, that
Mhm.
require other medications to counteract the side effects. They have a history of taking advantage of people, of lying, of setting people up for failure.
Crazy.
We know this. They lie and they lie and they lie. And yet we continue to buy into it. And we have a generation of children who are put on ADHD medication. We have a generation on anti-anxiety, antidepressants. Risperidol, I think, is an antipsychotic medication. And now we have kids being put on testosterone and estrogen. And this is all just funneling money right into big pharma.
Yeah, it's all a money, and it's also for votes. Like
Yeah,
activists, radical activists are exploiting autistic youth not just for the money, but to gain political power. Because so
yeah,
they, if you can exploit 10 million people who have no relationships, whose meaning was stolen from them by the very government that they claim to be against, that they're actually voting for, then that's 10 million more votes for Democrats.
yeah. Well, and I don't even know at this point if it's a party issue because I was a lifelong Democrat.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying
It's
it's
just
more
I think
votes.
yeah, it's more votes
Like
for what I mean,
not
I can't
not
even
only
figure
is
it out
this,
anymore.
yeah, sorry, not only is this exploitation and abuse, it's voter fraud.
Right. Yeah, well,
You
they're what
can't.
they're doing is they're telling a vulnerable population
Mhm.
that there are people out there that hate them so much they want them to die. And that's
They say
just a
this about Trump
horrible
all the time.
narrative. Yeah. Yeah. And it's
Yeah,
just
you tell
they say it
that's
about
voter
me. They
fraud. You
probably
can't
say it
do that.
about you. That because we
Yeah.
disagree with this one specific thing, I can't, there are lots of people I disagree with, and I don't hate them, and I don't want them to die.
Me neither.
Um,
I love
and so
everybody as the way God made them.
if you're telling autistic children that all these people who disagree with them actually hate them and want them dead, that's incredibly disturbing. I don't know how you would have felt when you were 8 or 9 if you'd heard that people wanted you dead, and if you had parents telling you that there were people who wanted to kill you, which is what a lot of these kids are being told. I can't even
Yeah,
imagine
it's part of
how
an
scary that
SEL
would be.
program.
Yeah.
It's part of
Yeah.
that Marxist program.
Yeah, and it really it I think it's incredibly disturbing to children. The messaging that
Hmm.
disagreement is hate. And the whole thing, the whole narrative
Yeah.
of the critical theory is just I think it's incredibly harmful. But you touched on something a little bit earlier that I think is so important, and that is the trauma and the
Hmm.
struggle that kids who are on the autism spectrum, I think typically have more, they grow up and they have more just struggles kind of putting things together.
Hmm.
They have more trauma. They have more that they're grappling with.
Yeah.
And
And
I really
another
think that a lot
one
of
of
the
the
self that people have is due to that trauma.
Yeah, well, another thing about big pharma is think about ABA therapy, which I call slavery. It's slavery. I mean, what I've heard, I mean, it's probably changed a little bit for the better, but I think the whole thing should just be banned. Like it just let us grow up without interference. It's not that
Yeah,
hard. Just let
yeah,
us grow up, let us play with the stuff we want to play with, let us dress up the way we want to dress up, let
yeah.
us do what we want, and no medication required, no early intervention. Just let the kid go to 1 year of preschool and maybe normal education, grade level, and that's fine. So,
Or maybe something totally different. Because I homeschooled one of my children, and it
yeah,
was a pretty amazing experience.
the
I
homeschooling,
actually was
I have
like
tried
very,
that.
yeah. I never
The
thought
only
I would
issue
be
with
sick.
homeschooling is you don't have that social connection.
But I
The
think
biggest
in
thing we
some ways
lack
that that's
is
not
social
so
connection.
bad. Yeah, I
Mhm.
think in some ways that's not so bad because
Yeah,
um,
in the
child
case of
is a
social
little
contagions are
tricky.
terrible.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like I can see how there'd be some positive to that.
Right.
But to me, friendship just seems like a human right.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that with the child of mine that was homeschooled is that we had lots of out of the home activities that we did. So
Yeah,
he had lots of connections outside the home. He didn't have friends his
and that's
age, but
fine.
he had lots of friends that were adults that he had great conversations with and felt
Hmm.
very connected to. So I think there are lots of different ways in which people can have that social.
Yeah,
If you're sending them into a school that's predatory, which is what I think the
yeah.
schools are.
Every public school is predatory. I never felt safe in a public school. I every day I was like, what are they going to do to me today?
Oh, oh,
Every day for 13 years, it was like that. What are they going to
wow.
do to me today?
So what are your plans for the future? I'm assuming you've graduated from high school. Is that correct?
Yeah. I graduated in 2022. I'm
Okay.
currently 21 years old. Um, yeah, God has given me some very big plans. Like I already met up with Chloe Cole a couple of times,
Uh-huh.
and I met up with some of the Turning Point officials from that event and other events, as well as Young Americans for Freedom. And I also want to get in with groups like GenSpect and Center for American Liberty and all the others you can think of to create a sort of autistic movement rooted in truth. The existing movement is completely overrun. It's terrible. I feel like I have no voice in my own community right now. I actually feel more at home with the detransitioner movement than in the autistic movement itself because my own community would hate me.
Yeah.
They'd hate me because me saying they should be allowed to live the way they were made to them feels like subjugation, which is crazy because they have been subjugated. They've been subjugated by this radical transgender ideology, which is totalitarian in every aspect. It's Orwellian, in fact. And if anything, it's Orwellian. Like, it's all the stuff that the schools and others put us through. Like, this is meant to be about the future, but I wanted to get like what I want to do is sort of end not just the transitioning of autistic youth, but banning the transitions. It's a great start, but it's not going to be enough because people are still going to think they're trans, even if they're not transitioning. And it's not like a social transition would be banned, it's just the medical procedures would be banned. So you really got to go after the root cause of why people say they're trans. And I know a lot of the reasons why. I mean, it basically boils down to trans is celebrated while autism is repressed.
Mhm.
So, and again, I remember not really having any free speech. I didn't really have free movement growing up. I mean, it does get better when you're an adult, but you're sort of thrown into the real world without a proper education, without the proper development, the crucial development that you've lost. And you can't get those childhood years back. Like, you've lost out on years of your childhood, maybe because of your own mistakes you made or because of something the government did to you. In this case, the latter. Sometimes the former, a lot of like before high school, a lot of it was self inflicted, but especially later, like I was forced to go to that different school that I was talking about earlier in this interview. Uh, Again, that was done just because I'm autistic. I lost out an entire year of my social life and social development. I mean, my grades weren't that bad, but I was still depressed. You can still do well in school while being depressed. In my case, I even had suicidal ideations. It was because of that, I felt like my life and my feelings just didn't matter to them.
Yeah.
And this was at the same time in fact, 2 days after eighth grade ended, I was asked that question of which sex clothes I preferred. So,
It's interesting that you mentioned this, and I don't know if we are the anomaly, but I think it's really normal for kids who are, especially kids who have who don't fit in some way, to to think dark thoughts, to be depressed, to be suicidal. I mean, I don't feel like I was that different from a lot of my peers in
yeah,
that going through adolescence is a tough time. It's
yeah,
hard. And especially if you've got trauma or you've got learning disabilities or autism or ADHD or any of the other isms that we throw at our kids, that adolescence is a tough time. And it's because of all the changes that are going on. And so we have a society now that says, oh, don't worry about it. You don't have to go through puberty. We'll block your puberty. And that way you don't have to deal with those difficult feelings. But those difficult feelings are part of the process of becoming an adult.
yeah. Well, I do remember being discomfort. Like, I remember really not liking puberty when I was 12 because of all the acne and stuff. And I remember being uncomfortable with like the body hair and stuff. Like, I'd imagine all it would have really taken for me to be a full blown detransitioner would be to have that one decision that I mentioned earlier going the other way.
Yeah.
because that would have definitely led to a transit innie, and I would have certainly been told, "Oh, puberty blockers are reversible." And if I had thought that, I would have definitely been put on them, which is not like 97% chance of cross-sex hormones. So, like, it would have basically snowballed into perhaps even surgeries. Like, I would basically be like the other detransitioners. And I
Yeah, it's amazing how
a five
close.
second decision. I missed it by a 5 second decision. And a couple other
Right.
things, like my parents waited to give me a phone, but I was on the computer though, and that was enough for me to be pushed to the edge. So it's basically just don't give your kids devices at all until they're like 16 or maybe
Yeah.
even later.
Yeah, maybe, but
Give
I'm
them
reading
You can
right
give them
now
a
and it's
smartphone,
interesting. Yeah.
but like put a software on there that'll like prevent certain, in fact, you could probably count more appropriate sites than inappropriate sites. So just have a list of sites that'll be allowed to load or a list of apps that'll be allowed to be downloaded.
Or just give them a flip phone. I mean,
Yeah, just go
honestly,
back to
I
the
feel like,
2000s, get them a flip phone.
yeah, I mean, I feel
If
like,
worse
I
comes to
don't
worse,
think
get them an old phone from 2000s.
yeah, when I think about the rates of autism going up, like and
Oh
part
yeah.
of what I think is happening is that parents are not interact engaging with their kids. And so their
Mm,
kids are not getting the kind of and I think, I mean, my family has, we call it the tism because like we all have the tism. And we've
yeah.
it's sort of it's a joke in our family because we're, all autistic. And so I think that there are there's a genetic component, but I also think that there are a lot of kids these days that having autistic like symptoms because they're not being socialized by their
Yeah, well,
if you've got
that's
a if you've
that's
got a
what's
mom
called
who's on a
mislabeled.
cell phone all the
You're
time.
not autistic, but you perceive
Mhm.
yourself as such to big
Right.
pharma and
Yeah.
schools. You will have, in fact, I've heard this mislabeled autistic diagnosis, and it immediately ostracizes the kid, ruins their
Yeah.
childhood, and it's all to get more funding. Everything about it is fraud.
Oh, right, because the schools get more funding if you're
Yeah.
special ed kid. Yeah.
Yes, they do it so they can get more funding. It's fraud.
Yeah. Well, and it's especially with it being a spectrum now, it's so easy. I mean, I think, well, it's the same thing with gender dysphoria. When you look at the criteria for gender dysphoria, it's absurd. I mean, and it's again
All it
based on
takes is just the
stereotypes.
tiniest amount of they probably diagnosed me with gender dysphoria when I was 14.
Yeah.
Even probably just from me not liking puberty.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think
I'm glad
about, I
I
mean,
didn't get
my daughter
taken
went
to
through
a
a phase where she
specialist
wanted to
about
wear
it.
underoos because they were so cool. Because she had a friend who he had underoos, and that might be before your time, but underoos were pretty cool. And she's like, "Can I wear some underoos?" And I'm like, "Sure." Well, these days, if somebody had seen that, they'd be like, "Oh, she's wearing boys' underwear. She must be a boy." I mean, to
Mm,
me, that's so sad that kids are being given that message that,
yeah.
something that basic. Especially like we were talking about, puberty is hard. And I think kids who are, and I don't know if you have these sensory issues, but a lot of people with autism
Mm.
have sensory issues. So
Well,
any
it's
kind
just differences in sensory
of,
processing.
yeah, the physical changes of puberty, I think, are more challenging for people with
Oh yeah,
autism. And so,
puberty is very like exacerbated for us.
right. Yeah, it's funny because I talked to this guy, his name is Hashi. And he's on the autism spectrum. He's
Mm.
much older. Even older than me. And he said he started taking estrogen because it just kind of was like taking a sip of wine. It just took the like sharpness off of life. And so
Mm.
for him, he was like, he recognizes now that it was a mistake. But a lot of these
That doesn't mean
medications.
his body wasn't damaged.
Right. Oh, yeah, his body was definitely damaged. And that's the thing is rather than teaching people how to deal with the discomfort of life, we medicate and we medicate and we medicate because Big Pharma has somehow convinced everybody that we should
Oh,
just take our
freaking
life.
medication is always the solution. It doesn't matter what the root cause is. How about we find the
Right.
root cause?
Right. Yeah. Well, and in a lot of cases, the root cause is life.
Yeah,
It's like
we live in a sinful world. Nothing is perfect.
Right. Yeah. And we can't medicate that away. I'm curious how you've managed to wean yourself off of all those medications, because that's really difficult for after having been
Mm.
on them for so long.
Well, I started about 6 months ago, but so far I don't really feel any different. In fact, I feel better without
Yeah.
them.
Good.
I feel more confident. I feel more, sociable. I just feel better.
Wow. Gosh, it makes you wonder. I mean, one of the side effects of antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication is sort of a stifling of innate sexuality. And so if we
Mm.
have a bunch of, preteens who are taking antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications, and they're not feeling connected with their sexuality and it's being suppressed, suddenly we have this like whole new
Yeah.
of asexuals that are part of the
Asexuality is not, and there's a
LGBTQI.
whole misconception about that. I think I mentioned that earlier. People think, oh, because we don't like certain things and fluids, we're every autistic person's asexual. I've never heard something so fake in my life. If
Yeah.
anything, I've seen more of them say pansexual, which that's
Yeah.
not much better. It's actually worse. Uh,
Well, because
Pansexuality is like,
yeah.
I think that's another one of those Tumblr invented
Yeah.
things
Well,
from
pansexual is a
recent.
term that was created specifically for the trans narrative because the
Mm,
idea is that you love everybody, not based on their genitals, I guess.
no,
Your
that
sexuality.
definition is so wrong.
I don't even know. Yeah, I mean, I probably mangled it, and I'm sure that I'll have trans activists who will tell me that I'm transphobic or I'm panphobic maybe. But yeah, I feel like all
Something
of
like
this is
that.
yeah. So I'm curious to see how your life is gonna. It sounds like you're really committed to activism and to working hard for people with autism. And I'm
Oh
curious
yeah.
because one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of the organizations that are out there for people with autism have been captured completely. So
Yeah, they
so
put trans over us. They don't, their autism last.
yeah. Yeah. So are you thinking of starting a whole new organization?
Oh yeah. It's going to be a worldwide I think about calling it like the International Association for Autistic Freedom, or the IAAF. I mean, I've been asked, have you gotten your 501(c)(3) yet? I'm thinking about it. I look up apply for 501(c)(3), as well as founding a branch for Turning Point. I plan on seeing Charlie in a couple of weeks. Founding a branch of Turning Point similar to the Young Women's Leadership Summit, YWLS, for the like an Autistic Freedom Summit, the AFS for Turning Point, and getting involved with other organizations, speaking publicly at rallies, and being able to go across the country to have events at universities and high schools and wherever we need to go, and
Yeah.
be able to do all the stuff that people like Charlie Kirk and Chloe and Laura and all the other people doing all this are doing. What's funny is SEL is meant to create activists for them, but what they ended up doing was creating an activist against them in my case. They wanted me
Oh,
to be a
here.
leftist activist, but in doing so, it backfired so bad that they turned me into an advocate against them. And arguably, it started in like third grade. This is like the longest lasting passion that I still have today, I found. Because I remember being upset about all of this in third grade.
Oh, wow.
And
That is a lot.
I've wanted to do this for many years and wanted to speak publicly to a bunch of people about what's been happening to us. Our school choice is basically non-existent in my case because of the mandatory special education. I mean, I've seen people with autism be able to have their school choice realized, at least for a little bit, but I wouldn't say that's very common. I mean, a lot of us get held back, we graduate late, so a person who's 20 may still be in high school just because they were held back for, I don't know, some false lie they made up. Like, I've had
Yeah.
hoaxes made up about me in school by the
Well, and
school.
I think I don't know what happened. Like, I didn't learn to read till I was in sixth grade. And I don't know what happened because I was put in special ed in sixth grade, and there
Mm.
was a special ed teacher, and suddenly I could read. Like, I don't know what she did, but instead of giving me like toddler books, she started having me read like Ray Bradbury books and,
Mhm.
adult books, grown-up
Hmm.
books. Say adult books. That sounds wrong in this day and age, but
Yeah.
more like young adult books. And
Yeah,
suddenly I
like
was like
adult level.
adult level books. Yeah. And suddenly I was reading, and I remember very
Huh.
clearly how my sixth grade teacher thought I was lying because I did a book report on, it was actually Mr. Popper's Penguins. And my teacher said,
Hmm.
"You can't even read. How did you do a book report on Mr. Popper's Penguins?" And it was because the
Well
special
then.
teacher had like somehow figured out how to teach me to read in a very short amount of time. And so
Wow.
that's where I feel like,
Praise
if you
God.
yeah, if you put a child in with the right teacher, it can be huge. But like you, I think about my school experience as I mean, I I can think of very little positive to say about public school.
Well, they're
I
all
mean,
state owned, so I remember calling them communist when I was 11.
wow,
So
wow.
it
Well,
turns
and it
out I
just
was right.
yeah,
I
you
was
just
right
had,
about a bunch of stuff at age 11. Like I remember
especially
disliking
in
maybe China.
Colorado. Yeah, especially in Colorado, because the
Yeah.
bill that we both testified on, they will actually they will require teachers to use the incorrect name and pronouns of a child.
Oh yeah.
That's
I
one
think
of the
that
things.
that was
Yeah,
passed a while ago. They're trying to
yeah,
do this to the whole state now.
right.
So,
Yeah,
everything about this bill is rooted in a totalitarian, bloodthirsty, money-thirsty, power-thirsty, it's basically pseudo-religion ideology.
yeah. Well, I'm really curious to see how it sounds like you're hooked in with some organizations that are, hopefully going to provide you a platform so that you can reach
Yeah, I've been
people.
talking to them. I haven't been able to do anything more than attend thus far, but I'm really trying to do some stuff. This is like the first interview that's supposed to go live.
Uh-huh.
So, that's a big step in the right direction, and
Would
I'd
you
like
want
to do
people to
more
contact
later.
you? Would you be interested? I mean, if you, I don't want to share your personal email, but if you want to share some, like your Twitter or Facebook feed or
Yeah,
whatever, send those to me, and I'll include those in the description below so people can reach out to you. Because I do feel
yeah,
like there's a groundswell of people who are finally recognizing that our society's off the rockers. You know?
yeah. Well, it's not just that. Like autistic community, like we don't have a voice. Our meaning has been stolen from us by these early intervention programs. Like again,
Yeah,
the schools often tell you you're wrong and that we're gonna it'll and even if they don't say that deliberately, they'll treat you in a way that makes you think that. And then the trans comes up and says, "Oh, this is why you're wrong." And it all happens like that. That's probably the fastest way I've said how it happens. I would like one of the biggest things I want to do. It's actually the number one most important thing to bring the loving gospel of Christ to the autistic population to show them what love actually is.
uh-huh.
And
Yeah, which
I'm already saying I would give my life to save one autistic kid, but I would like to save every autistic kid and autistic adult alike worldwide. We don't have that meaning or spiritual connection or that purpose in life that people are supposed to have, and I want to provide all of that. Like I want to make sure that every autistic person has the close friends they need, has the loving support, can receive conversation and invitation, can pursue education, careers, and relationships just as easily as everyone else. And overall, autism isn't this disease that people think it is. I mean, in some cases, there are like what people call severe autism. If that's rising, yeah, we're going to go find what's causing that and root it out. But the positive aspects about autism aren't talked about. And therefore, you have a society that sees us as a burden. And that's what I'm trying to fix. So
which
I'm
I
trying to
think,
give us the
yeah.
powerful, truth based voice and community and belonging that we desperately need.
Yeah, which I think is really important because I think, I mean, I don't think I'm an anomaly in that I'm extremely isolated. I don't have community. I
Mhm.
don't have friends. And a lot of it is because I am different. I mean, but it's not, as you
Yeah,
said, it's not necessarily,
it's not
I mean,
wrong.
it's our
It just makes us
society.
unique.
Yeah, it's our
It's what
society that,
makes us unique young men and women, or even older people like you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, um, this movement that was supposed to celebrate diversity has actually pushed people to be more conforming and and to be
Yeah, and
less
they've
accepting of
completely
people who are
erased,
out.
you hear they erased autistics and LGB, or not autistics, women and LGB, but autistics arguably have been more erased. I mean, what's been
Yeah,
done to us is basically a Barbarossa. Like the best comparison I can think of is the way Hitler looked at Russia. The trans looked
yeah,
at us in that way and thought we could just roll these guys over in a couple years. All we need to do is kick in the door and the whole thing will come crashing down.
yeah,
Hitler said that about Russia, and I'm sure the trans had a similar mindset about autism. How they're doing this, like Planned Parenthood, which I'm calling planned genocide, is involved with this. And I really think that them and Autism Speaks, if there's one thing we still agree on is that Autism Speaks is evil. I think they're both involved with each other to create a prenatal autism test like they did for Down syndrome. First of all, the Down syndrome test isn't even accurate. The autism test would be even less accurate for sure, guaranteed. And they would try to kill us. And I call them planned genocide. They were literally founded off of uh, committing this against black folks.
right. Trying to eliminate the black
Yeah,
people. And now they're creating they're sterilizing
yeah,
a lot of these autistic kids
yeah.
are being
40%.
sterilized with blockers and cross-sex hormones. I mean,
Puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries.
yeah, I've often thought this
And
is a
it's this is
eugenic move,
heartbreaking to me. We should be able to have families of our own. It's one of the
right?
big things I'm advocating for is for us to be able to date heterosexually more easily and get married, have families, and just again have more normal lives.
Right. Yeah. But when you are giving puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones to kids who haven't even been through puberty, those kids will never have a chance to
Yeah,
experience what it's like to have children of their own. And I think in any
yeah.
other case, people would be up in arms if we were sterilizing children. And in this one case,
Yeah.
for some reason, they're celebrating it.
When it comes to the autistic side of things, like I think it was only a matter of time for somebody, an autistic person, to have an autistic fixation on saving autistic youth from
Yeah.
this tragedy, this atrocity that's being committed to us by
Yeah.
political figures and arguably a political agenda.
Well, and that's one of the powers of people with autism is that perseveration and that focus and
Yeah,
that commitment.
like
And that
I haven't
is,
been able to get my mind off of this for a year. It's been a
yeah,
year.
wow. Well,
So,
I think in this case, it's going to be, you're going to help lots of people. And I'm excited to see where you are in a couple of years because I think that your message is important.
yeah, I hope so. I would love to look back at this in 2 years and say, "Dang, we got it right." But pray
Yeah.
in the name of Christ, God willing, we can get this started so that
Yeah.
we autistics can live lives that are akin to that of the average in whatever place in the world you live in.
Well, that sounds great. I wish you well, and hopefully this interview will reach some people, and that they will reach out to you. And I mean, it. One of the things that I noticed is I started doing interviews about 5 years ago, and when I
Hmm,
first started speaking out about my experience with gender confusion, whatever, I started having people reach out to me, and it has been phenomenal seeing how much this movement has grown. And it is because
yeah.
of people like you speaking out and sharing your experience. And it doesn't take that much to make a really big difference. So thanks for your efforts.
You mentioned you wanted to provide my social media connections. I'm on X, Instagram, and YouTube. The username is Sven_Scharpen. It's pretty simple. No lowercase. YouTube has Sven Sharpen with the S's being capitalized, but you could probably just look up Sven Sharpen and you'll probably find me. So, yeah, well, it was good talking to you, Aaron, and I hope we can have more opportunities in the future. And I'd like to see where this goes. Hopefully, something goes well. We'll keep that in our prayers. Well, goodbye.
Goodbye. Yeah, thanks, Ben.
You guys all have a good day.